$1 million used to be the finish line. For most of the 20th century, it was the number people pointed to when they talked about financial success. Save $1 million, retire well, never worry again. That was the promise. Sometimes spoken, sometimes implied, embedded in an entire generation of financial thinking. But something has shifted, and if you've ever sat down and run the numbers yourself, even loosely, you've probably felt it. $1 million in retirement savings, in today's economic reality, may not carry you nearly as far as you once assumed it would. This isn't about creating fear. It's about understanding structure. For decades, $1 million has been the gold standard of retirement planning. It's the figure that shows up in financial conversations, in magazine headlines, in casual debates about the future. Ask most people in developed economies what they'd need to retire comfortably, and $1 million is almost always somewhere near the top of the list. And honestly, it makes sense why. $1 million sounds like an enormous amount of money. It sounds like more than most people will ever see in a single account at one time. If you earn $60,000 or $80,000 or even $100,000 a year, the idea of having $1 million saved feels like it should last a very long time. 10 years of income sitting there. Maybe 15. Surely that's more than enough to fund a full retirement. But retirement doesn't work the way most people imagine it does. Because the question was never simply about how much you manage to save. It's about how much you'll need to spend, for how long, and under what economic conditions. Let's walk through the math, and let's keep it simple. In many developed economies, a commonly referenced guideline suggests withdrawing roughly 4% of your retirement savings per year. This isn't a rule. It's a framework, one that carries significant debate among financial professionals. But it gives us a useful starting point for thinking about scale. 4% of $1 million is $40,000 per year. That's roughly $3,300 per month, before any taxes are applied. Now sit with that number for a moment. In countries like the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, the cost of housing alone, whether you're renting, paying down a mortgage, or covering property taxes and maintenance, can absorb a large share of that monthly figure. Layer on healthcare, insurance premiums, groceries, transportation, utilities, and the general overhead of daily life, and that $40,000 begins to feel much smaller than it sounded just a moment ago. And this is before we account for inflation. Generally speaking, prices across developed economies tend to rise over time. What costs $40,000 today could require $55,000 or more 15 years from now to maintain the same standard of living. Your savings don't exist in a vacuum. They exist inside a moving economy, one that doesn't slow down because you've stopped earning. Then there's the question of duration. Life expectancy in developed nations has been steadily increasing for decades. If you retire at 65 and live to 90, that's 25 years of withdrawals. If you retire at 60, which many people actively plan for, you could be looking at 30 years, possibly longer. Now stretch $1 million across that timeline. Adjust for inflation. Factor in that taxes still apply to many forms of retirement income. The math doesn't fall apart, but it tightens in ways that most people don't expect when they first set that $1 million goal. And all of this assumes a relatively smooth path. No major health emergencies. No prolonged economic downturns. No unexpected family obligations. Life, as we all know, rarely follows projections that neatly. This isn't the criticism of saving $1 million. That's a genuine achievement and one that puts you ahead of the majority. But the assumption that reaching that number automatically guarantees decades of financial comfort. That assumption deserves a much closer look. Here's where it gets more interesting, because the gap between expectation and reality isn't just mathematical, it's deeply psychological. Most people spend their entire working lives focused on income, salary increases, promotions, better titles, better offers, a higher number on the paycheck. And that makes perfect sense. Income is how you survive, how you build, how you participate in the economy around you. But retirement flips the equation entirely. You shift from earning to withdrawing. from building to drawing down. And that transition changes everything about how money feels. $1 million in a retirement account is not the same experience as earning $1 million. When you're working, the money replenishes. When you're retired, every month the balance gets a little smaller. And that slow, steady decline creates a specific kind of anxiety, one that no amount of planning fully prepares you for. There's also the question of identity. Work gives people structure, purpose, routine, social connection. When that framework disappears, spending patterns often shift in ways that catch people off guard. Some spend far more than expected because they're trying to fill the empty time. Others restrict their spending dramatically, gripped by a fear of running out, even when their financial position is objectively fine. And here lies the paradox at the center of this whole conversation. $1 million is simultaneously a lot of money and not enough, depending entirely on the structure around it. The same amount can feel like freedom to one person and like a ticking clock to another. The difference isn't the balance, it's how the money is positioned and what it's designed to do. People chase a number, but a number without structure behind it is just a figure sitting on a screen. So what matters more than hitting a specific number? Generally speaking, the people who report feeling most financially secure in retirement aren't always the ones with the largest lump sum. They're the ones who've built structures that produce ongoing income, assets or arrangements that generate cash flow without requiring them to trade their time. The distinction between a pool of savings and a stream of income is one of the most underappreciated concepts in personal finance. $1 million sitting in a single account is a finite resource. Every withdrawal brings you closer to zero. But a collection of assets that produces reliable income month after month fundamentally changes the experience. It shifts the dynamic from watching your money shrink to watching it work. This isn't about recommending specific financial products. It's about the underlying principle. Wealth that generates is structurally different from wealth that simply depletes. And this reframe matters long before retirement. The decisions and financial habits you develop in your 30s and 40s tend to shape how your 50s and 60s feel. People who begin thinking in terms of cash flow, not just total net worth, generally arrive at retirement in a different position. More flexibility, more options, significantly more peace of mind. It also means rethinking what enough actually means. Rather than fixating on a single target number, it may be far more useful to ask a different question altogether. What would my life realistically cost each year, and what kind of financial structure could support that cost indefinitely? That question leads to fundamentally different decisions than simply saving as aggressively as possible and hoping the money holds out. $1 million is not a small amount of money. Reaching that milestone is something the majority of people never accomplish. But treating it as a finish line, as the moment when financial worry simply vanishes, is where the disconnect begins. The real measure of retirement readiness was never a single balance. It's a structure. It's whether your money is positioned to work in a way that matches the life you'll actually live, not the life you imagine from 2 decades away. The number on the screen is just the beginning. What matters is what holds it up. If this kind of analysis resonates with you, there's more to explore on this channel. We look at the structures behind real wealth, not the hype, not the shortcuts. Consider subscribing if you want to keep thinking deeper.